I'm getting a divorce. My son's wife, who just got married a few days ago, blurted out these unexpected words. I was so surprised that I couldn't find any words at all. My son had just had an emotional wedding a few days ago. They should be on their honeymoon right now, and yet here she was back alone, delivering this unbelievable statement. What on earth had happened during their trip? Tears began to overflow from her eyes. All I could do was silently watch as she crumbled on the spot. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a homemaker in my 50s who raised 2 sons. When my sons were young, I discovered my husband's affair and got divorced. Since then, I have worked from morning till night, raising my sons single-handedly. My 2 sons have contrasting personalities and had entirely different childhoods. My elder son, James, is smart and did well in school. He secured a scholarship to a prestigious university. After graduation, he landed a job at a well-known major corporation. 2 years ago, he married a woman his age from his workplace, and they are now happily living together. On the other hand, my younger son, Ethan, was always a challenge. When he became a middle schooler, he joined a group of delinquents and started causing trouble at school. I was called to the school many times to apologize for his behavior. When he started a small fire at the school, I had to compensate for the damage. Ethan, raised in a not-so-wealthy single-parent household, might have felt inferior to others. His unexpressed feelings may have led to his problematic behavior. I worked hard to get Ethan through high school. His rebellious nature didn't improve, but he managed to graduate without any major trouble, which was a relief for me. Even after high school, Ethan was still a handful. He managed to get a job at a factory through a relative's recommendation, but quit after just 3 months. From then on, he led a life of constantly changing part-time jobs, which was a concern for me. Moreover, Ethan was also a womanizer. It might sound like I'm just a doting mother, but Ethan is quite a handsome man. From high school to after graduation, he never ran out of girlfriends and would bring different women home each time. I've lost count of how many times I've lectured Ethan about his relationships with women. After graduating from high school, he started living on his own, but I was always concerned about whether he was causing trouble for others. Now, 5 years have passed since his graduation, and I still worried about his aimless lifestyle. One day, Ethan came home for the first time in a while and said, "Mom, I have something to talk about. I'm going to start working seriously." I had heard this many times before. "I got a job at a company, and they're going to hire me as a regular employee," he said. He probably knew I wouldn't believe him, so he started talking about the company, emphasizing that he was serious this time. "Really? It's great that you found such a company," I replied, surprised. In the midst of this economic downturn, it was unthinkable that a company would hire Ethan, who had only been working part-time jobs. "My current girlfriend introduced me to the workplace," he explained. According to Ethan, he was dating a woman named Michelle, and she managed to get him a job at her father's company. I should have been happy that my son got a full-time job, but a part of me couldn't help feeling skeptical. I couldn't help but suspect that Ethan, a well-known womanizer, might have manipulated Michelle for his own advantage. He was adept at manipulating women's hearts, and I worried that Michelle might be too infatuated with him, overdoing things for his sake. He once became completely reliant on a woman when he was out of work, and I had sternly warned him about it. I hoped he wouldn't be a burden to Michelle. Despite my concerns, Ethan seemed to be working sincerely after landing the job. Previously, he never stayed in a job for more than 3 months, but this time he managed to work for half a year, then a year. While this is expected for a normal person, it was unusual for Ethan, who had changed jobs multiple times. Then, after 3 years of steady work, Ethan came to visit with his girlfriend, Michelle, who had introduced him to the company. They came to our house to make an announcement. "Mom, we're getting married," Ethan casually dropped the big news. Seeing the 2 of them together, I had suspected this, but hearing about my mischievous second son's marriage still took me by surprise. "So, you 2 have decided this?" I asked, looking at their serious expressions. I didn't feel like opposing their decision. "I understand. It's the path you both chose, so move forward together." It was a bit roundabout, but I accepted their marriage. Michelle's eyes filled with tears, and she began to speak. "Thank you so much. We'll work together to build a wonderful family," Michelle vowed, her voice trembling as she looked at me intently. "I've been thinking this for a while. I've been thinking this for a while, but Michelle is a woman with a pure heart too good for Ethan. Michelle, take good care of my son. The reason I'm hearing this happy news today is because you've supported him all this time. Thank you very much, I responded with a smile. Michelle was moved to tears, and big drops were falling from her eyes. Seeing her gently wipe her eyes with a handkerchief, I felt like crying myself. I was sure she had been taking care of Ethan, who still had some mischievousness in him. From the bottom of my heart, I thought Ethan was really lucky. Ethan, make sure you make Michelle happy. You have to cherish her more than anything, I said. Ethan nodded shyly, and so Ethan and Michelle were officially engaged. The wedding was simple and solemn, a modern ceremony with only family and close friends in attendance. Various memories came back to me, but I sincerely wish for them to support each other as lifelong partners. I truly hope that Ethan could make Michelle, a selfless and devoted woman, happy. Shortly after the wedding, Ethan and Michelle left for their honeymoon. Considering their savings, they decided to travel within the country instead of going abroad, which I thought was a sensible decision. I expected that Michelle would take charge of their marriage and keep Ethan, who used to be a playboy, in line. But such expectations abruptly turned into despair. It was 3 days after they left for their honeymoon. When I was relaxing at home alone, the doorbell rang. Wondering who it might be, I opened the front door, and to my surprise, it was Michelle. What on earth happened? Weren't you on your honeymoon? I asked, astonished. Michelle stood there with an utterly drained expression, and Ethan was nowhere to be found. Something unusual must have happened. For the time being, I invited her in and sat her down in the living room chair. Michelle began to speak in a feeble voice. Mother-in-law, I'm sorry. I'm getting a divorce. Her words were shocking. After all, they had just gotten married a few days ago. For the bride to be speaking about a divorce so soon was unimaginable. Ethan, did something happen? I hesitantly asked. Michelle had returned alone in the middle of their honeymoon. Something unbearable must have occurred. After a moment of silence, Michelle quietly spoke. He was having an affair. I was speechless. These were words that should never be uttered by a newlywed bride. He was still secretly seeing his ex-girlfriend, who he was supposed to have broken up with. What? My mind was starting to spin. Ethan, who had pledged an eternal vow at their wedding, was cheating, secretly getting back with his ex-girlfriend. This shouldn't be happening. And Ethan, while we were on our honeymoon, Michelle began to sob, covering her mouth with her right hand. I was dumbfounded, unable to find words. Introducing a mistress to your wife during your honeymoon? I had never heard such a story. How could my son do such a terrible thing? Tears streamed down Michelle's cheeks. The sparkle in her tear-filled eyes was not the blissful one she had just a few days ago. It was a sparkle tinged with the pain of betrayal by the one she loved. Apparently, his ex-girlfriend was living at the place Ethan chose for their honeymoon. As shocking as that was, Ethan had suddenly called her to come to the hotel where they were staying. It was an unthinkable event. What on earth was Ethan thinking? So that happened, Michelle. It must have been hard. I'm truly sorry for what my son has done. I said. All I could do was apologize, not understanding what my son was thinking. As I hugged Michelle's collapsing shoulders, I continued to listen to her thoughts. I couldn't believe what was happening before my eyes. It was too painful, and I couldn't bear it, so I left the scene immediately. When his mistress met Michelle, she must have been all over Ethan, flaunting their shameful relationship. Michelle was downcast, saying she never expected this to happen, seemingly more confused and saddened than angry. I felt an increasing wave of anger contrasting with Michelle's sadness. Ethan had caused such distress to a woman who had always been his rock. I picked up my phone. In a fit of anger, I picked up my phone and dialed Ethan's number. To my surprise, Ethan picked up right away. Hello, Mom. What's up? Ethan's carefree voice came through the receiver. I wondered what was going through his mind when he answered. Ethan, where are you right now? I tried to start the conversation as calmly as I could. He must know that Michelle is missing. I expected him to say something about that and waited for his reply. Well, isn't it obvious? I'm on my honeymoon, enjoying it with Michelle. Did you call just to interrupt us? Ethan was still playing dumb. He didn't seem to understand why I was calling. I was more astounded than angry, but I rallied myself and raised my voice. Stop lying. Michelle is here with me. What? I heard Ethan's small, surprised voice over the phone. Then he fell silent. Come back home right now. I told Ethan to come home immediately, suspecting he was thinking about how to deal with the situation. Ethan had even dared to lie at this point. My mind was made up. Michelle was still crying with her head down even while I was on the phone with Ethan. I offered her the most comforting words I could muster. I couldn't believe my own son could be so foolish. Even after I told her about the phone call, Michelle said she didn't want to see Ethan right now, and understandably so. I decided to handle Ethan myself for now. I called Michelle's parents to inform them of what happened, then I drove Michelle back to her parents' house. Her parents were furious, needless to say. All I could do was apologize profusely on behalf of my foolish son. When I got back home, I prepared myself for the confrontation with Ethan. I was exhausted, but even so, I waited for my son to come home. When night fell, Ethan finally arrived. I'm back, he announced with a troubled smile, as if he still didn't understand the gravity of what he had done. Every time I saw his face, my anger kept rising. Ethan, you've really messed up this time, I said. Ethan wore a look of pure annoyance. My ex-girlfriend said she was close by and wanted to see me, he replied, grinning foolishly, as if he might have given Michelle the wrong idea. He seemed to believe he had done nothing wrong. He claimed running into his ex-girlfriend was just a coincidence and that she had reached out to him. He made these sorts of excuses. Ex-girlfriend? Aren't you still seeing her? Did you really call her in the middle of your honeymoon? I threw these piercing words at him. Visibly embarrassed, Ethan responded, well, we were only seeing each other occasionally. He might say that, but I could tell that after Ethan broke up with his ex and started dating Michelle, he continued having a physical relationship with his ex. She was what you might call a friend with benefits. When I confronted him about this, Ethan readily admitted it, almost as if to say, what's the big deal? It's just like having a friend. We both know what it is. What's the problem? He said nonchalantly. Furthermore, when Ethan told his ex that he was marrying Michelle, the girl suggested the location of their honeymoon, where she lived. It's a lovely place full of nature, she had said, and Ethan, easily manipulated, took her advice. I couldn't help but feel frustrated. As soon as Ethan and Michelle arrived for their trip, this woman insisted on meeting them. Maybe she wanted to show off to Michelle that she was still close with Ethan, or perhaps she wanted to flaunt that she was a desirable woman. Regardless, there was no doubt that her actions upset Michelle. After hearing the whole story, I finally spoke. Ethan, I'm cutting our ties. What did you say? He asked, stunned. You clean up your own mess. I'm not getting involved. I informed Ethan that I was severing ties. It was a decision I made when he lied to me. I had done more than enough to clean up after this son of mine. He was a grown man now, and I had neither the inclination to cover for him any more nor to help him. Please, Mom, don't cut ties. For a son who disregards his devoted wife and betrays people, the least I can do is this. You've betrayed someone you should have cherished. I told you countless times to make Michelle happy. I believed you have finally outgrown your bad habits, but I was mistaken. This is the only option left for me. Just one wrong act can turn even your family into strangers. I told this to my son. When something is broken, it can't be mended the same way again. Wait, Mom, please. Ethan suddenly started crying and clinging to me. I wondered where his confidence from earlier, seemingly endorsing his infidelity, had gone. I couldn't help feeling pathetic at the sight of my son like this. Things with Michelle probably won't just end with a divorce. You might not be able to stay at your company either. If that happens, it's all on you. Live alone for the rest of your life so no one else gets hurt. That's the only way you can atone, I believe. Afterward, Ethan was blindsided by a divorce request from Michelle. From Ethan's and his mistress's phones, a heap of evidence showing their adulterous meetings was obtained. Hit with an alimony demand, Ethan had no choice but to agree to the divorce. Soon after, he was laid off from the company run by Michelle's father. Michelle's father was livid, and it was clear retaliation. So Ethan, ousted from his company, became jobless and burdened with alimony payments. He came to me in tears, but I refused to have anything to do with it. As a mother, I coldly pushed away my son who had cheated on his wife. However, considering his character, he might run away, ignoring the alimony payments if left alone. In the end, as my duty as a parent, I introduced him to a job at a company run by an old friend of mine. To be frank, the work there is downright grueling. My friend, who had a rough youth like my son, still has a somewhat intimidating character. Ethan works under his watch, and it seems like his days are filled with work from early morning till late at night. I made him promise beforehand to deduct the alimony payment. I want nothing more than for my son to experience harsh social punishment. I have been getting reports that the payments are being regularly deposited by Michelle. I had been feeling down from this incident, but my other son James gently supported me. James gave me wonderful news. His wife was pregnant with twins. Eventually, his wife safely gave birth, and I joyfully became the grandmother of 2 grandchildren. James's family decided to move right next to me. After being troubled by my younger son, my eldest gave me the gift of a peaceful life. Now I'm spending my peaceful days interacting with my sweet grandchildren.